Picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Welcome back, folks. This is the beginning. This is the start. I promise I am working on it now. I can lift the veil. Working on the time machine. This is the Mike's Models version of the 1/6 time machine from the classic George Powell movie of the same name, The Time Machine. And today we are going to do Meet the Parts, which is also going to be subtitled Clean the Parts, because there is a lot of cleanup to be done. Now, I'm going to break this down into 3, maybe 4 main segments. The chair, which they call the time saddle, which is to me needlessly kinky. But it's the chair, there is the dish, there is the framework, and then there is the mechanisms. Now the mechanisms are going to be a while into the future. I'm going to try to get done what I can get done by breaking this into sizable, obtainable chunks. And the first chunk I'm going to do today, or I'm going to start on this week, will be the chair. Now let's get down to the table and meet the parts. A lot of these parts will end up being replaced. A lot of these parts will end up being altered. A lot of them may not make it to the final build. And of course, you know this is going to be a collaborative effort. A global spanning effort with Wayne in England and Phil out on the left coast of in San Diego, and me kind of smack dab in the middle between those 2 points. On the East Coast, we are going to be working with this kit. Now the goal is not to make 3 identical kits. There's no fun in that. The goal is going to be how each of us approach the different aspects of this. So, like I said, my first goal is to maybe get the chair done and get it up and out of the way so that I can concentrate on the rest of it. But let's start with meeting the parts. Today's contestant on Meet the Parts is the Mike's Models version of the time machine. We will start with the base. This is the base. It's got the foot pad of the barber chair molded into it. It's got dents for the mechanism, for the chair, and for the side rails, and for the feet that go on the bottom. Now, there's going to be some work done to this piece because we have to run channels for wiring and stuff in here. The base will sit up on feet like this, so there is going to be some built-in room for a switch or whatnot. Where it's a question of how each of us want to handle the chasing and running of wires. So I think it's going to end up sitting, mine is going to end up sitting like this, and that's going to give me my gap underneath here that I can tape wires down to, or channel wires, or channel the switch and the jack. I'm going to make this a something that can be run not on batteries but a transformer. So we're going to have to make a space back here, probably in the back, for, I don't know whether it's going to be displayed on its side so that you can see the side, or whether it's going to be displayed head on. So I will probably want to cheat the power jack somewhere back in here on the underside, and then maybe put the switch on the front on this side to make it easier to get to. But that's the base. Now, another important thing to know about this right up front is I got no instructions. There are no instructions on how any of this goes together beyond looking at photos and comparing things to the photos. So we have that to go on. But here is the base. The time mechanism rotor is going to go attach like that, and then into this. And these, what I'm going to be calling the earmuffs, go on the sides like that. And of course, if you're familiar with the movie, you know these will light up. And then the big party piece is the big dish on the back that kind of makes this whole thing look like an airfoil or a swamp boat. But that goes on the back. This kind of attaches that way. A lot of this mechanism will be replaced with hardier stuff, but that kind of goes designed to go like this, if that makes any sense. And then of course the big frame goes around it like that. The side panels will go, let me move these earmuffs out of the way. The earmuffs go like, or the side rails go like this. And of course in the center of all of that, well, here's the control console that goes up front, but center of all that is the barber chair that goes right in here, and that's made of various parts that have to go together. And all of this Victorian filigree that is happening around the edges of it, this all needs to be cleaned out with tiny picks and files to clean it up. Now it sits like this with that on the back, I believe, and this on the front. Now there are some locating pins that will help me fit the sides and everything else. I believe that fits like that, which means this goes around to the front like that. So the chair is going to sit something like that with these big, heavy, bulky pieces of upholstery here that go like this and like that. Now I've already had to reinforce those pins that will help the back fit into the sides. So work has started a little bit of cleanup today. Of course we have to clean in and around all of this filigree, and some of these parts are going to work better once we start putting things together, and we could take the weight off some of these delicate bits. I think what I'd like to do is to build up a side of a chair, because the way this back goes in is you can't really fold, pull it apart and put those pins in. You kind of have to build up a side and then add the other side to it. So that's going to make for some interesting work. If I can hold off on this big old pad until the last minute, I'd like to do that, because this is going to have to be finished. And right now it's just a very heavy piece. If I could do that, I'm really having to decide whether it's going to behoove me to work up the two sides like this and then try to fit that back in, or whether I'm going to have to build up a whole side of the chair and then add this down on top of it. If I can do all of that and still not have to put the seat pad in, then that's going to save me at least some heartburn. But this is going to be the big one, is try to figure that out. Now it's also true that the armrests that come with this chair are meant to be hinged. They're meant to hinge up, and not from the back like that, like you would think. They hinge from the front. So you go like that and you climb in, which is really strange. I've checked the film, and that's what the guy does. He pulls up on the back of the chair, and so it actually opens up something like this. So the job for this week is going to be getting all of these parts cleaned up, which means tiny files and closing up some bubbles and things like that, and possibly getting the chair built. That's the manageable goal. We'll see if it can be done. Alrighty, there comes a time in every model build when you've got to stop planning and start putting pieces together. I have reached that point, and I am going to put the 4 little legs on the base of the seat, and we're going to start building up from there. So nothing to it but to glue it. And let me maybe knock the top of this off a little bit so that it doesn't want to wobble inside the hole. But we're going to do the 4 feet. And then we're going to set it down and level it. And we're going to match it up to these 4 holes in the base. Okay, I've been working all day on this chair, and I think I've got down to a point where I know what I'm doing. But scratch building the back of the armrest, because the armrests are hinged. The armrests actually hinge up like this from the front, but they need a place to sit on the back that is level. There is nothing provided in the kit part for that. Now this is, I just have the chair rubber banded together here, so don't pay too much attention if things look a little wonky. This is the bottom cushion, and that'll go in like that, and then the head rest goes in like that. So turn this around so you can see it on the camera. It looks something like this. Now this, if this were a real barber chair, or used as a barber chair, it would sit like that, and the headrest would be up like that. So the arms are in about the right position, but they need to sit level, and to be brought up level to this bit. So I don't like this. I don't like the way that that toes out, and there doesn't seem to be any real way around that until at least I get to where I'm gluing this piece down, this swan. There's swans on both sides, and then this is the one he actually uses in the movie. So that only thing is, it needs to be brought back down to a resting point at about there, where it is level. So means I need to build up something like I did here, and then match it over there. So I don't know if I'm going to end up putting a magnet in there to hold those 2 things in place or not. I just wish there was more of a anchor. This hinge here isn't a great anchor. Well, hello everybody, it's Tuesday, and it may not look like a whole lot has changed since yesterday on the chair here. Looks pretty much how I left it, because I was concentrating on this bad boy here. This is a newly printed dish, and what is so good about a newly printed dish? Well, what I like about it is the details are a little finer. They're not as bold as they are on the dish that comes with the kit. It's a little finer, but the nice thing about it is it's also level. When I go to spin it, trust me, it's spinning level. It's the whole thing is wavering, but once you get it going, it is spinning level. And that's going to be a lot handier when it comes to motorizing this thing than the one that's coming with the kit that has high and heavy spots and light spots in it. This one just seems to be a whole lot more balanced. So I will be making these available for both Wayne and Phil on their kits. I just think it's going to be a happier result. Well, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday. It's hump day, and work is continuing on the time machine, specifically on the time saddle, the chair, the big chair. And last night, I went ahead and glued this side rail down, and I cannot glue the other side rail down without trapping the big back in there. So I'm making sure that I am ready to do that, because it has to be pinned in here with the other side. So the next step would be to glue the right side down, and that would give me my pedestal or the base of the chair and the back. And then what I would like to do is like sit this in place and kind of mark out where that back needs to be, because that needs to be immobilized. It's not going to be something that will go back and forth. I just need to make sure that it's fairly upright and that it does not hit the mechanism at the back. Once I mark that, then I can pour some glue all over it and settle that down, and then I can work on getting the armrests in. Now these can be put in even after the sides are glued on. It's just got this swan head hinge mechanism here, and then this is going to be located back in the armrest piece that I made, so that it will sit like that. I'm thinking what I want to do is cut this out, cut this off, and put a magnet there so that it's magnetically sealed. Would you cut it out? I tried it already. It's magnetically sealed. But that'll give me a good magnet joint there. So that would be the next step. So let's take care of getting this glued down to the rest of this chair. We'll go ahead and lay this down for right now. It has to sit. Let me get in here so I can see what's going on. There, it has to sit like that. And then, well, you know how it goes. Let's get this glued down. Okay, lesson here for today is don't be afraid to use the clamps if you have to. Sometimes you need a little bit more oomph when you're pulling parts together. And basically all I've done is taken two clamps at opposing forces and put some 15-minute epoxy in that joint and clamped it in, because this one had a slight bow. It was bowing. It was okay in the center, but it was, well, let me see if I can, it was bowing like this. So clamping one side down and then clamping the other. Hopefully that's going to set up correctly. So we put the slower curing epoxy in, which gave me more time to manipulate everything before it starts setting up. But I believe, and I think it's been verified, that slower curing epoxy actually cures stronger. So I put the slow epoxy in here, clamped it all together, and it's going to pull that side in square. And if I put a where's my tiny right angle square, it pulled everything in nice and square. So we've got a nice good base here, and the I want to leave it like this to sit, but it's got the back of the chair trapped in here like it's supposed to. Now I'm going to once that cures and has set up good and strong, I will come back to it and do the rest of the work. But right now, getting it to cure correctly is the most important thing. So we're going to let that sit. And I think the next thing I want to do, or I can do, let's get all of this stuff off of the base, and maybe I can attach the wheels. Just move this out of the way, push that back, is to go ahead and pop these wheels into the base. Now they are going to go in like this, and trust me when I say this is not the last time we will see the bottom of this base, because we're going to be chasing wires and everything else, but at least this will get it up off of the ground. Alrighty, progress is being made just left and right, on the left arm and on the right arm. I've got the magnets glued in. This front swan is not glued in yet exactly, so I could tweak the position a little bit. But when you hold that and pull up on the magnet, that's a good strong magnet there. it has got a magnet back here, and it's got a magnet at the top of that armrest, so that snaps back in place. So I think the last bit of significant work to do today, pull those out, will be to set the inclination of the back of this chair. Now I've got the wheels glued on the base, and I put a level on it, and it is surprisingly level, which is going to make a difference when the time comes that we put the wheel on here and try to get everything to spin true. Having this level is going to make a difference. So there's always a chance I might have to put a shim somewhere here or there under one of these wheels, because the wheels themselves are not perfectly round. But the next step is to set an angle for the back of this chair that allows for it to not hit the back of this. And for that to happen, I need to make sure, see how wobbly this is? I need to make sure that that base is sitting inside that hole absolutely square. And I think what's happening here is that now there's going to have to be a hole drilled down through here yet, because we've got to get power to everything that happens back here. There's going to be power coming up that is going to light these lights. There is power that's going to come up and run the motor that's going to spin the dish. All of that has to come down through here, so it's going to have a big old honking hole right through there. But I need to, and you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea to go ahead and drill that out now. I'm not going to set the chair down. That would be stupidity. Would be to glue that chair down. There's just way too much stuff that has to happen before we allow that. But what I'd like to do is to get this base at least to the point where we know it's going to be on nice and flat. And obviously it sits like this. That joint is looking good, and then the whole thing sits down like this on the pedestal. But I need to make sure that this is sitting down nice and flat, and it is not right now. So I'm going to take off some of the superfluous material around here, maybe cut that. Hey, you know what? What? Chicken butt. You know what? I'm going to drill this hole out. If I drill that out, that might take care of both of those things at the same time. Alrighty, had to do a cascading amount of things. First of all, I had to make sure that this piece was level. So I did that. I've cut a hole through the bottom of the pan here where all of my wiring is going to run. And now this, and I also sanded this down, which means this plate now fits flush against the floor. Way too soon to glue that down, but it now fits flush like it should, and which gives me this fitting flush as it should, which means this can now fit flush as it should, and that will give me my ultimate angle of uprightness, for lack of a better term, because I don't want it to the back of this to be hitting the motor here. So what that does is that tells me where my line in the chair is supposed to be, and I can line that up with, make a hash mark on the arm of the chair and on the side of the back here. Whether you can see that, see my witness mark there. Now I can take this off, set it to the side. I can actually take this off of the chair, or take this off of the pedestal completely, move the pedestal out of the way, put the arms over there, move the pedestal and the spinning mechanical housing out of the way, and that gives me my chair. And I can, now I just need to figure out what's the best way to approach that. Do I want to pack it with epoxy? Do I just want to tack it with CA first? There's some gaps that need to be filled here, and I'm thinking that they can be filled at roughly the same time. So that sits like that, and those two lines meet up, and I can just jam some of the white two-part epoxy, the stuff that sets up really quickly. I can jam some of that in there, but I think I want to tack it in place. Not really, actually there's no real, unless I tack it on the joints, there's no real place to put any CA. So I think what I'd like to do then in that case is just hold that in position and jam some epoxy down in there, and that will be where this chair finishes its work for the day. And there's one last, of course I've got the arms on here, I'm not worried about that. I am kind of worried about how this pad fits in. It kind of rocks back and forth. Actually, I got to determine front from back, because see, that really needs to be the back side there. But maybe I sit this down in a bed of epoxy to get its level. I want to flock this separately from the rest of the kit. I can have the arms and the back in place when I'm doing my painting and flocking, but I want to keep this out separate because I want to be able to get in behind here and around the arms as I'm painting, and that's going to be a lot easier to do if this pad isn't in place. Now see, that's going to give me my, okay, that's also, see, there's a, don't know whether you can tell, there is a stop back in here that is keeping the pad from pushing too far back, which is fine because it should come out and overhang the front just a wee bit. So if I'm going to do that, then that's going to sit like this. Yeah, everybody's going to be happy about that. I just need to level the bottom off here. I've got some spilled epoxy, and I never cry over spilled epoxy, but I've got some raised areas there that needs to sit against. I think I would like to sand that just a little bit on the bottom, just to flatten that down, just so it sits in a little bit lower than that. Yeah, I can get away with sinking that down just a little bit. So I may have to get the riding belt sander out to do that. And yeah, let's go ahead and set this back. I think I'm ready to set the back in place. So fold that up forward for the last time because it's not going to be able to do that much longer. This is Water Weld JB two-part epoxy. I get this at the hardware store, at the Lowe's or the Home Depot or whatever your local equivalent to your big box hardware store is. I try to patronize them all equally. I don't recommend one over the other, but this is two-part plumber's epoxy, and it sets up pretty darn quick, and it's sort of a mid-range. It's not instantaneous like CA, and it's not slow like the 15-minute epoxy or epoxy sculpt, which can really take overnight to set up completely. But this will let me let me think about appropriate tools in here. This will allow me to jam that in there, and then I can clean it up and neaten it up with epoxy sculpt after I have done the deed. But really, I just need it to sit where it's going to sit. Alright, so I've got everything in place. The putty is setting up, getting harder, and when it does, it gets easier to work with because you can start tooling it. So what I have is I have the chair in place. I've got the stand with all the mechanics in place. I've also got this little spacer in between that makes sure the two objects are not touching. So letting this cure up, and once that's cured and it's fairly rock solid, then I can remove this back piece and this, and maybe squirt some epoxy, liquid epoxy in there to kind of fill in that joint. I don't know if I'm going to let the epoxy putty do the whole job, but it's to the point now where I can start tooling it with an X-Acto knife and pulling out the stuff that's way too much and leaving what's going to hold the two pieces together in place. So yeah, without doing too much more monkeying around with it, I'm ready to let that sit. Now I'll put the arms back in place. Snap those down. And the time is going to come pretty soon when I want to glue the front swans down. Glue these swans in place. But for right now, it is making the job a lot easier as far as painting or priming it and gluing it. So I'm thinking that if I leave these off, then I will be able to prime in around there. And I think the more I'm talking about this out loud, the more sense that makes. Go ahead and leave those off until, because they are not the same color. These swans are golden, whereas everything else around them is wooden. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to go ahead and prime this and maybe even paint that wood before we glue these down. So we'll go in something like that. Alrighty, as we wind down on a Wednesday night, I have got the entire chair outside of the foot padding here, but the entire chair is in primer, and tomorrow I will start laying in a base coat of brown and a base coat of Hull red on the padding. Even though I'm going to be flocking that, I want to put a base coat of Hull red underneath that. I think what I'd like to do, of course I can roll this now because I've got wheels on it. What I'd like to do is sit this on, you can see it's got a bit of a wobble to it, and I think what I need to do is sand down the high spot and get it ready to sit there. It's not going to be nailed down for quite a while, but I still want to make sure that when it goes in, it does sit nice and flat. See, it does. Actually, it does fit there kind of nice. Yeah, I don't know where that rocking was coming from. That only happens when it sits on the ground, but since it's... Oh, I wasn't in all the pegs weren't in all the holes, that's why. There we go, and of course, we've got magnets on the arms to hold those in place, both sides, and trying to determine what the next step is. I think what I'm going to do, until I see what Wayne has up his sleeve for the electronics, is I think I'm going to work on this a week and then take a week off, work on something else, and then come back and do work on this for another week. I don't think I want to barrel straight through on this. We're at Wednesday now. Got a couple more days this week. I may get this painted and I may get it flocked. If I can get the entire chair done this week, that would be a really nice place to stop that. So, yeah, that's it. Morning, kids. It is Thursday, the gateway to the weekend, and you know what that means. It means, well, nothing, because, Thursdays can mean different things to different people. But today it means we are going to start painting this chair. I'm going to put and now the chair is such a complicated beastie that I can't paint it all at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the underside, and we're going to, that's weird, I'm getting a little bit of an adhesive thing going on here. Was that Is that leaching? No, that's not. Anyway, doesn't matter because it's going to be into the chair and you're never going to see it. I'm going to start painting the woodwork on this seat. And I've gotten out some brown, and then of course we're going to use a wash to stain it darker. But I want to first get this massive color on here, and then I'm going to use a mixture of Hull Red and regular red on the areas where the velvet is going to be. Now, yes, there's two different schools of thought as to what's on this chair. Is it leather or is it velvet? I want to make it velvet because I want to. I want to flock it with like I did Elvira's couch, because I think that'll add a nice texture to everything. So that's what I'm going to do. And first I'm going to start by undercoating the colors so that when I put the flocking over top of it, it's if there's any bald spots, you're never really going to see them that badly. So let's start by putting some brown on the woodwork. It's going to get messy, so I'm going to take the camera away. Okay, I've been having a pure blast today. Just painting my little fool heart out. This is the kind of modeling I like, when I'm just at one with my painting. But here's what I've been up to. First, I masked this area off because this foot pad needs to have the same flocking on it as everything else. And that's basically sprayed with a Hull Red. And when it comes to putting the adhesive down, that is how you do your flocking. You put the adhesive only where you want the flock to stick. I will do that with a smaller hand brush, and I will just keep off of this perimeter, and I will only flock around the center. So that's why it's important that the whole area is painted that undercolor, so that any spots that get missed or any margins that don't get quite up to the adhesive, they will still show the same color. Now, I'm going to do, when I get down to the brass tacks of it all, I will be doing the brass tacks just with a dot of brass on top of those to set them off. This whole base here is going to be wooden. I'd like to keep it a color that is not the same color of wood that is in the chair, but I don't know how practical that's going to be. I might have to end up making it somewhere in the same family as the chair color, even though that's not my my first inclination. I think I'd like to go lighter. I just saw a little corner here that I did not get sprayed, so there you go. And this is easy enough to mask off once it comes time to paint the brown. That might be the next step. You can see where I've got the console mapped out here. I need to make these holes that the framework go into, need to make those larger as well. So I think I might be doing that this afternoon. That might give me something new and fun to do while everything else is drying. And speaking of drying, what I'd like to do with the chair here, which I've done some dry brushing and some washes on, is to, first let's see what this looks like with the big old cushion in. Oh, I like that. Yeah, I don't hate that at all. But that's looking sweet. Now, this is going to get a glossing. Nice gloss coat of clear. And you can see I did the metal in the back here of the headrest. And then I will do the same as I did with that floor piece. I will hand paint the flocking adhesive up to this edge, leaving the outside edge unflocked, but then I can go back in and touch it with the brass tacks. So the next step is to really gloss this so that it looks like highly polished or stained wood with a good clear gloss coating on it, and that will also give me a good base to put the adhesive down. So last steps for the day on this and the armrests. Now the armrests have some gold on them, which I need to put yet another coat on, but that's going to sit something like this. Go ahead and put that in place. Is gloss everything here so that the wood has a high gloss finish, and then I'm ready for the adhesive flocking coat. Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is Friday. It is the last work day of the week. It is the last work day of the first week of the time machine. And of course, all time is relative at this point. But it's Friday, and that means it's Flocking Friday. Happy Flocking Friday to you. Yes, I'm going to be doing the seat pad, the headrest, the armrest, and the back. I don't know if I'm going to be doing this bit just yet because there's so much other stuff that has to be painted on this base or done to this base that I don't know if we are going to be ready to flock that just yet. I can see having to bore more holes in this, plus I still have to paint around it. I just don't think we're ready to do this bit yet, but that's certainly not going to stop us from doing the rest. Now what I'm going to do is separate the bits into 4 smaller bits, which is going to make it infinitely easier to work with. We're going to take the arm pieces off. And once all the flocking is done, I can glue these swans in place, but right now they're easier to work with separately. So we're going to take everything off of the table that is not immediately concerning us. So that means removing this, and that's going to leave us these 4 pieces. Okay, I think I'm kind of ready. I've got everything. I've got the tube loaded with the flocking material. I've got the adhesive / paint out. I've got the pieces prepped and ready. I've got the cheapest throwaway brushes imaginable because I am not even going to consider trying to clean these off and keep them. I'm just going to use them and throw them out. I've got one of these for the fine lines. This is for the broader area. There's about I'm reading the instructions again. They say there's about a 15-minute, there's a working time of 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to start with the hand rests because I think that's a good place to kind of get my feet wet for the arm rests. The easiest piece I think is going to be this because there are no borders on it. I've hot glued a cup to the bottom of this just to give me something to handle it with. I'm basically going to cover it with the adhesive and then sprinkle like I'm doing salt, like a salt shaker. I'm going to do a combination of the puffing and the shaking to get that on. But I really want to make sure I know what I'm doing. I think the order is going to be hand rests or arm rests, and then the headrest here because that's an isolated piece. The big trouble is going to be in doing this front and back because I don't want to have to break that into 2 pieces, although if I do need to, I can just stop painting here and do the back at one time and do the front at another, although I would choose not to do it that way. We're going to see how easy this is as I get going. It's been a while since I've done the Elvira couch, so I'm trying to remember all the pitfalls of that. And then the thing is, you have to leave it alone for like days. So that's going to be my place to stop on a Friday. I can leave it for the whole weekend and not even look at it. You can do a little bit of a shake off to get rid of some of the loose fabrics, but you're not supposed to tap it or touch it for at least 72 hours is what it says. Here, let me refine what I just said. Drying. Once you've applied sufficient fiber, set aside your project to dry for 10 to 15 hours before you remove the excess fibers. That's before you do the shaking off thing. Now it says that there's a list at the bottom here, and this is where I got that. It says, important. While the adhesive is dried at this point, 10 to 15 hours, it will take 72 hours to a week for it to cure completely. So this is great because what I plan to do is once I get these fibers on here, I can let this set up overnight, come back tomorrow, tap it off, and of course the video is going to be done today. I'll show you what it looks like with all of the fibers on it, but not tapped off. And then I could tap it off over the weekend and really set the whole chair aside for a whole week while I'm working on the rest of this thing. I don't know if I'm going to start on the electronics tomorrow or next week, or whether I'm going to go on to another project and kind of come back to this every other week. I don't know. we'll see what we will see. But this is great because this will force me to set it aside and not touch it. So let's get to it. I think there's nothing left to... I've got the fan turned off so that it's not blowing excess fiberage around. And it's going to get stuffy in here pretty soon without that fan on. So I'd better get cracking on this. Okay, this is the first armrest flocked. Now it has way too much flocking on it. I know that. It will be shaken off at a later date, but best to cover it too much and then dust it off later. But that's working. That's how I remember it going on. So we've got a little puddle of it down here, which is what we're supposed to do. We'll collect all this and reuse it, but that's the idea. You don't, this stuff gets all over, so you have a catch basin for it. But that's working. That's fun. So we're going to continue this on the second armrest. The problem is finding a way to hold this up while it's setting, and that's what this clamp is for. Okay, so I've got both arms done. I'll zoom in on those so you can see them. They're sitting over there doing their drying duty. This will be the last bit that I can use the tiny brush for, and that is the headrest will be the next piece. And then I will do the, I guess I could cut in the edges of this with the small brush. What I'm doing is I am trying to stop at this point where between the tack line and the actual, see, I'll show you, I'm painting up to the tack line with this adhesive / paint, and then that will be the tack line will be the color of the paint that I used yesterday, which is why, you know, reason number one why I painted it. And then I can put the brass over the tacks and not worry about trying to paint brass on top of the flocking. These buttons here are also flocked, so they don't have... I've seen it done in some builds where somebody will have painted those brass, but they are not. They are the same color as the material. They're just a... And that's common in upholstery. You'll upholster the buttons with the same amount, with the same material. Now, I'm not being overly picky about how well this is going on. As a matter of fact, the heavier the better, because this is the adhesive for all the little flocking fibers. The only time I'm being cautious is where I'm coming right up to that border. And there I'm being careful not to get where I don't want the flocking to go, because I don't, if I'm remembering correctly on the Elvira couch, it was not easy to scrape off the flocking from where I did not want it. So I know I am risking a mistake here by talking and filming while I'm painting this on, but I think I'm confident enough at least in the process to show you a bit of how it's done. And really, this is, I'm of two minds of it. Is it colored glue or is it just enamel paint? And you're using the adhesive or the wet paintedness of it to stick your fibers into the wet paint. I just think this is, you know, plain old enamel paint. I don't think it's got any great adhesive properties baked into it. But yeah, I've got the bottom of the, get the bottom of the headrest. I'm sorry if I can't see this on screen. Let me get this camera out of the way. It's just in the way. Meet the flockers. Yes, I've been waiting to use that all week. I have to tell you, it's a lot of buildup, but now it's done. That was it's a lot of fuss and fury, but can't argue with those results. I'm just doing a little bit of cleanup here so I can reclaim some of the flocking material. I don't think I'm going to be needing to do anything resembling a second pass on this. It would be impossible, since you would end up glopping you know, the adhesive glue all over everything again. You kind of have to make it go right the first time. Just cleaning up a little bit of this, dumping it back in, and then I'll put it back in the baggie. You get, for the setup that you get, you will get an amazing amount of projects out of it. I have barely touched the surface of this, of the 8 fluid ounces of paint that you get. I barely touched the surface. This is seriously made for people who do like jewelry boxes and things like that, where they have a lot of acreage to worry about. I've done the Elvira couch and this chair, and like I said, I've barely scratched the surface of the amount of material that I've taken up. But we're gonna let this sit for the rest of the day, and then as we get closer to the time I need to put the video together, I may do a preliminary tap down to show you what it looks like with the some of the flocking material removed, because right now it's way out of scale and way too much. I'm just dusting off the areas of the wood. See, this is the thing where wherever you don't put the adhesive, it don't stick, so it comes straight off. I just don't want to risk disturbing any of the glue. And I can put this to the side and work on some other aspect of the kit right now. I'm still second guessing whether I need to do that foot pad on the base. It would be nice to go ahead and do that since I've got all the materials out, to go ahead and do that now. But then I'm wondering how I would ever cover it up to work on the other areas. Plus, that would take that piece out of contention. I couldn't work on it at all this weekend, or until the rest of the thing is dry. And I really need to get into that piece because I need to discover where the wiring is going to come down and the holes that might need drilled and all of that. So I think I'm better off not flocking that footrest part until we are further into the build. Thinking of making that pedestal piece basically black, if not a very, very dark walnut, because I think I want it to be darker than the wood of the chair. I'm going to go ahead and, oh, see, I got plenty to clean up here, but that's what the back looks like. So we're going to set all of these to the side. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. I'm letting gravity take anything away that's going to come away. Not touching you. So we'll set that there, and I'll clean out this pan. Alrighty, so here you have all of the major pieces that had been flocked, and they will sit like this for at least overnight. Well, like I said earlier, I'll wait till it's not even it's not even noon yet. Not even noon yet. I've got plenty of time to work today, so I can wait till this evening when I'm getting ready to put the video together, and I'll dust these off a little bit. See what I can, maybe blow them off with the airbrush or something. See if that doesn't remove some of the stuff, and then show you how those turned out. I've been outside getting messy. I'm trying to keep everything away from this area, but I've been getting messy. First thing I did was get out the drill press, and I drilled this hole out bigger. Had a big one of those doorknob hole cutting saw or bits, and I just cut this out bigger because it really only has to be small enough that these will lock in on both sides, which it does. But this, by coring it out larger, gives me more room to play. And what I'm talking about playing is this is where I'm going to be putting my motor to spin the dish. Now there's going to be, once we get up into this area, there's a right angle bevel gear that Phil is so diligently working on getting. But that's going to sit like that. This is going to be hollowed out. And what I've got at this point is I've just for giggles, I put a bearing in here so that whatever shaft comes up will ride inside this bearing and not wear against the resin. Because if you start wearing two pieces of resin together, they'll just wear each other down to a nub. So if I can epoxy in a bearing at this point, that will take that strain off of there. I would cut this off, but I believe this whole piece is going to be replaced with a brass turning, so looking forward to that. And then the right angle bevel gear goes back to the dish. But the first thing I said, like I wanted to do, was to cut out this area and maximize my play space. The second thing is I also wanted to drill a true hole down through the center that goes all the way, see if it goes all the way through to the bottom. So in case I have to run a longer shaft, I could do that and put the motor down here. But that's not really what I want to do. I could do that. The longer the shaft, the more the chance for wobbling happens. So I'm not keen on doing that. If I can keep the shaft shorter, if I can keep the motor closer to the thing that has to spin, the better off I think we're all going to be. There is a board that runs the motor. That's going to be sitting in here. So also out on the deck drying is the big base. I sprayed it with a coat of a dark walnut brown. And I also channeled out the bottom of it where I channeled like I did the Grissom, the big Grissom, if you remember that. I had to take a channel and just cut a wire passage through there, and that's what I've done on the bottom of that. Once that dries, I'll go get it and bring it in and show that to you. The last thing to do really today is to cut this channel. This is in the Mike's Models kit, you get two sets of the side rails. One set has a wire already embedded in it from there to there, and one set doesn't. I have to tell you that the one set that I got with the wire embedded in it, the wire was not embedded very well. It was actually coming out in a couple of spots that were unattractive to me. Plus, looking at Wayne's video today where he's describing the electronics that have to go in here, I think we're going to need many more wires than just, the two that are supplied. So if I can channel this out, then I can run, maybe 3 bundles of this wire up through there, and that gives me 6 wires going up and down both sides, and that should be more than plenty. So this is going to be long and labor intensive and meticulous work. So I wanted to get the big brutish stuff out of the way first, which was the base and that. So let me clean up this area a little wee bit, and we'll get down to the meticulous stuff. I'll probably take this on the back porch to do, since it's going to be resin dust. I want to do that outside where it's well ventilated, and I'll still wear a mask so I don't breathe any of this stuff in. What kind of a madman would do this? Well, the kind of a madman that needs to chase wires. That's just a very fine... I got to even it out a little bit, and it's taking very precise work with high-speed tools, and that's just a recipe for danger. So I'm taking it slow and easy. I clean out a little bit more in there, but that is going to allow me to do 2, maybe 3 strands of these, which, just putting a single strand in here doubles my original capacity, because there was only 1 wire coming in there before. So if I can get 2 wires up there, well, I've effectively doubled that. And there's 2 wires, and I can certainly fit 4 wires. It's a question of, whoops, getting it in camera, that's what it's a question of. Now if I can put 2 wires up here, then I've effectively doubled what the original part came with, and you can see I've got 2 wires here. That'll fit, and that's already doubled it, so I can actually put 4 wires in here, and that gives me 4 connections, so that's quadrupled my amount of traffic I can do. And that's only on one side. If I do that on the other side, then I've got 8 connections going up and down. And I think that would be more than enough for everything that I need to do. I need to check Wayne's video again just to make sure. I've got 2 going up, which will power the Arduino. There's a lot of stuff that happens inside the container here, this guy, but this sits like that, and that sits like that, and then the board is in there. And there's a bunch of stuff that happens here, but there are wires that have to come back out to go back to the motor control for the board and for the lights that happen back here. So that's where I am counting my wires before I glue everything down. And I'm thinking what I should be able to do is whether or not I CA them in place or whether or not I epoxy them in place. I could just run a bead of epoxy in there, and hopefully that would round over and kind of give me my contour back. If not, I can always put some putty on top of that. I'm trying to minimize the area that you would see. That's why I kind of put it on the inside where it would be kind of hidden. So we're going to see how well I can disguise that. I'm going to channel out the other side just like this, and then we are going to call it a week. And here's a grand picture of all of that I've accomplished this week on the time machine. Of course, I have blown off the flocking a little bit on this so that you can see the cushions are a little bit better defined than they were, and that's going to set up over the weekend. We're going to leave it alone, not touch it. Here we've got the base. I've got a first coat of that dark walnut on there. I'm not 100% sure that's going to be the final color. We'll work on that. I've got the rails in place. I've got both rails dug out. I have confirmed with Wayne the number of wires that we're going to need, and I think I can do it with my existing channels. I've got this bore out a little bit bigger than it was. That may or may not be the motor that I end up using, so that's just in there for showbiz right now. And then, of course, the big news I spent on the week was getting the nice dish printed, and that goes back like there. I think I'm going to stick with this printed dish. The detail is a little bit finer than on the other. It's not quite as chunky, but I do like how it is. It may be a little bit better balanced than the other ones. Thing about resin casting is, sometimes it's level and easy and even, and sometimes it's not. So I'm just going to go something like that. But lots of good progress start on a week. Good start to the project. Well, wow, don't adjust your set. This is a bright shirt. This was the first run at the shirts I was making for Wonderfest when I got them in, I realized I really didn't want neon green. I didn't want to be that conspicuous. So I had the other shirts made that you have seen that are the nice light blue ones. But this is how we're going to leave the first week on the Sprueverse challenge of building the time machine in cooperation with World of Wayne, Sprueverse, Phil Siegel, and your humble moderator. This week went really well. Of course, this is the area that I'm most comfortable with. This is painting. This is building and painting. I'm comfortable with this. Now, when we get into the electrics and getting the mechanics, there's the painting, there's the electrics, there's the mechanics, and all three of those have to mesh. And right now, I've done a lot of the painting and the flocking, and I'm very happy with that. And I'm starting to edge into the areas that I'm less comfortable with. Basically, the electronics, I'm okay with. Until we get to an Arduino board, which I have never worked with an Arduino board before, so that's going to be interesting. That may be what we start on next week, or I might just take a break and work on this every other week and work on something else. It's going to depend. I'm going to do an assessment on Monday morning and see how I feel. But something tells me I'm going to want to get back into electronics because I've seen some real good progress from Wayne on the circuit, and I'm maybe itching to try my hand at that too. So until next week, when it could be this, it could be something else. Time will tell. See what I did? Time will tell. Y'all be good. Be good to each other. Be safe. Be smart. Build a model. And I will talk to you next time.